Session 2, requesting our chair, Mr. Amit Kumar Mishra, Board and Member Secretary, HIMSS India Asia Pacific, to kindly take to the dais. Requesting our panelists, Mr. Uday Kumar, Chairman and CEO, OHM Healthcare Incorporation, OA, USA, Mr. Shirish Kulkarni, CEO, Palash, Mr. Premanshu Singh, Head of Marketing Enterprises, Practo, Mr. Vikram Anand, Founder, Health Research, Reach, Mr. Vamsi Chandra, Kasivajala, CEO, Enlytics, Dr. S.B. Gogia, President, EPAMI, Mr. Anand Ambekar, Principal Product Manager, India COE, Innovation at EMC, Mr. Sumer Sethi, MD Radiologist and CEO at Telerad Providers. Thank you. Requesting Chair Mr. Amit Mishra to take over kindly.
Very good morning, and the eminent panelist. This is one of the very, very important sessions which talks about clinics, hospitals and physicians. And this is going to be a very, very interesting session. Before I go ahead with the introduction of the eminent panelist, I'll just set a perspective. Indian healthcare is kind of poised for growth, and it is going to be growing, ever growing. Due to several reasons, there are some epidemiological transition, demographic transition. There would be increase in life expectancy, lifestyle diseases. Can IT make a change? Can IT, kind of help us live independently longer? Can IT help us, kind of alleviate the pains of the patients? So we'd be discussing, and some of the, I'll ask very, very basic question. We can get, cab in 10 minutes. Why can't we get 10 minutes in ambulance, We can actually order online shaving blade, but why can't we order medicine online? These are some of the very basic questions which we're dealing in, and how we can change the shape of healthcare IT in India with the use of IT. So I'll just turn it over to our eminent panelists for their introduction.
My name is Dr. Sumer Sethi. I'm a radiologist, and I run a teleradiology firm in India. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vikram Anand. I am a founder and CEO of Global Health Reach.
Hi, I'm Shirish Kulkarni. I'm representing Palash as CEO of Palash.
Hi, I'm Premanshu. I represent Practo. I'm the head of marketing. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Anand Ambekar. I'm product manager with EMC Square.
Hi, I'm Vamsi. I'm the president of HIMSS India. I also am the CEO of a company called Enlytics.
Hello everyone again. My name is Uday Kumar. I'm the CEO of OHM Healthcare.
I'm Dr. S.B. Gogia. I'm president of Asia Pacific Association for Medical Informatics and also president of Society for Admission of Telemedicine and Healthcare Informatics.
Hello, I would request Mr. Uday Kumar, Chairman of OHM Healthcare, to start with this session. He talked about the EMR adoption, what are some of the lessons learned from the US?
While he's doing this, I think we need to talk about adoption in two parts. One is technology. Why is it so hard for healthcare to have adoption issues? And the second is change management. What does it take to change from one application to another application? So let's start with what we talked about yesterday. Healthcare is complex, and at every stage of these interactions in these various phenomena that we just see from the patient side, from the provider side, and from the payer side, every transaction is very complex, and they all interact with each other. So this is the data for adoption across multiple countries. And this is a 2012 report, so it's a little bit changed today. But if you look at it, that you see Norway, which is one of the highest adoptions in the world, 98%, same as Netherlands, but what they've done is essentially adopted a basic system. So the system with multifunctional capability, that's still very low. On the other hand, countries like UK, Australia, and New Zealand have adopted a more full functional EMR, which includes data that is transformative. In the United States, for the last 4 years, we've had this program called Meaningful Use. And what the Meaningful Use program has done is it has defined specifically what kind of services have to work. For example, you need to have an electronic health record that's secure. You need to do medication reconciliation. You need to essentially record smoking status, allergies, specifically CPOE, that is doctors need to place orders for medication on the system. You need to have clinical summaries coming from the system. So there's a specific definition, and those definitions have to be achieved. And what we're really saying in the circles is how they were to be achieved year after year. As a result of this huge incentive program, the United States today can report 100% doctors using the system to place orders. 100%. That's in the hospitals. In the clinics, it's closer to 59%. But this is an achievement achieved partly because they defined what should be there, and every technology vendor had to deliver that, and also by the incentive program that says the government would actually contribute to making sure that this money is paid for. So what makes adoption so difficult? What makes adoption difficult is that this is the way EMRs work. It's very easy to build, and somewhere down the line it gets a little complicated. And those complications add up in a dramatic manner to this kind of screens. And these screens, I mean, you really cannot tell what's happening out here. And that essentially, that complication of the system and the screen design makes 90% of all the doctors look around and say, this is not meant for me. It's tough on the physicians, it's tougher on the patients. And what really happens is that nobody has time to enter detailed patient histories. Nobody has time to read them. So what will happen is that EHR becomes a kind of a tool that stays like a graveyard of all the documentation that nobody wants to read. What adds to the confusion is errors in the EMR itself. And now if you look at any other staff that's also doing the care coordination, they're not clear how to go about doing this. So that's the adoption problem. So what makes it easy? Well, there are two things that we need to worry about. On the first side is the requirement. What we have is a very complex interaction of various players, and what we need is a patient-centric approach, that everyone can see the same data in the same manner, and then everyone can contribute. And that's the before and after story. And for you to achieve this, you need 4 fundamental drivers. One, the information needs to be available at the point of care, the patient history and the clinical record. The second, it has to be extremely user-friendly. It has to be usable by doctors without having to learn, 0 training required. Third, it has to be adaptable. No 2 doctors think alike, no 2 patients are alike, no 2 diseases are alike. And finally, it has to be scalable. It has to grow from a single doctor to millions of doctors, and it is known for a fact that a single patient in a hospital has between 40 to 50 people who essentially deal with the person. And all of them need to know the same thing about the patient. So these are the things that makes it the requirement. Now what we need to try to talk about here, and this is the concept that we at OHM have tried to do, is address these issues. And the first thing we have come up with is that the doctors need to see just one screen. The entire information should be available on a single screen. And if you can achieve that, then it becomes easy. The second, all orders need to be placed by touch only. No typing, no writing oral orders. By touch alone, I should be able to place extremely complex orders. Third, I should have order sets which look like my paper sets, so I can actually place orders the way a paper order is. Fourth, all documentation required should also be touch. There is no need at this point of time in our modern world, when we're talking about digital health India, that we don't use digital health tools. And when I can do this level of documentation using only touch, I can essentially produce my discharge summaries and my prescription notes and my progress notes all using touch. If we do this, and this is the survey we did about a year ago with the University of Michigan, done studies of hospitals in New York and hospitals in Delhi and Pune. And we asked doctors in both these countries, what will make you want to adopt? And if you look at this system, other than the two things that we pointed out in this highlighted, which is documenting physical exams and writing prescriptions, doctors in India are actually more likely to use an EMR than doctors in the United States. The second thing is benefits. Throughout the system, we believe, and this is the nature of the belief, across all the benefits that doctors perceive, doctors in India are at least a year or two behind because they haven't seen the systems perform the way they are promised. But if you look at them, they're consistent with the approach. So the benefits that the US doctors are seeing from EMR, Indian doctors accept it, willing to go forward, and are actually willing to say so. So my theory on adoption is, it's the technology that needs to step up. The doctors are ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Udayakumar, for a very interesting presentation on the EMR adoption. Certainly, EMR adoption can definitely increase when we actually use some of the tools which are very, very, cost saving as well as time saving. Many of the doctors are very busy in the hospitals, and these kind of tools will definitely increase the IT adoption. The next session, I would like to request Mr. Shirish Kulkarni, CEO of PLAS, to go over and present us for the Healthcare Information Exchange.
Are you able to hear me? Good morning. And there was definitely a view that we heard. I'm going to move around. That's the way that I want to keep it interactive and make sure that I reach out to you, and that is the purpose of this presentation. So I would definitely be moving around and catching your attention if I would like to get it. So I would start with the perspective that is just now been presented is about the doctors, how actually the adoption of the systems that we are going to talk about in IT is impacting because of the adoption of one of the ecosystem member there, who is a doctor or a practitioner. The perspective I'll be bringing in is for actually how the healthcare information exchange as a concept is likely to be looked at from the patient's perspective. Let me give my background to start with. I'm a mechanical engineer, okay? So all of you who are actually the expert in healthcare, I have great honors about your knowledge. But as a patient, whenever I'm sitting and I'm actually performing that, that is something that I said, okay, let's flip and look at, not at the IT services provider, not as a healthcare expert. Let's look at how patient looks at the whole purpose of health exchange, information exchange as such. I was sitting back and thinking about, let us look at what happens in the manufacturing industry. Whether all those dimensions that we look in manufacturing industry, are there any replicas, dimensions that we can draw? We have lean management, where actually wastes actually are coming out of the end-to-end value system is identified. In healthcare system also, there are areas in which you will find out health is actually find out where are the wastes happening. Now, bringing that parallel, I was looking at the concept of health information exchange and fantasizing what it would be for a patient. Just imagine that I'm going into the hospital. There are sensors attached on me. I'm actually getting detected. And the whole persona, the whole history of my record, my family, my preferences, the way that I have been treated at various locations is getting found out. The whole record gets up and I get registered for that particular entry. It could be entry at the hospital. It could be anywhere. If I'm sitting in the car, I'm well connected. My car is connected. And if I'm actually facing any of the severe problems, automatically the medical health would be called. So is that what we are talking about all in theory? Is it all fantasy? And actually, as a patient perspective, I thought myself like this, a poor kid, I'm confused. Here is that, we are fantasizing about digital impact. We're talking about everybody having digital phones. We're talking about adoption of 99%. What is the user adoption? How are we taking care of the patient's perspective? Are we really caring about that? And then I looked at, whenever I enter any hospital, now there is some typical scenarios I'm going to talk, maybe a little bit drastic. Why am I getting asked about certain things and information again and again? Why this question is not answered? Why are there duplicate records? Why am I actually supposed to do same test again and again? If I change one clinic to other clinic, one hospital to other clinic, why is that I'm actually supposed to pay again and again? So why me? Why am I suffering? So this is the way that actually the drastic reality that I brought out, fantasizing about digital impact versus the reality that we are seeing is actually impacting the patients. So can we have something that will actually take care of the patients in the form of the controlled record that we will have? Is that something that healthcare providers will provide me? So my question is, who is going to provide me that particular aspects? Who is going to take care of my own interests and also healthcare providers' interests? Who is going to take care of that? So I started thinking about that. Can I have areas in which healthcare providers identify and create all these records? Can I look at these records being auto-created? Can I make sure that there is a system in which I will have the best patient's experience? Can it be cost-effective? Can we look at it basically reducing all the medical errors? Can it reduce cost for me as a patient? Can it generate certain things that I can actually remotely work, just tip of a finger, and I'm able to get all those details at no cost or at zero cost? Is it actually one point where I can just look at all those details that are available for my family and the ecosystem, and I share them across? And yes, I looked at it, and Palash has got a solution for that. Palash Fingertips. This is a mobile-based solution that Palash is bringing out. Is basically looking at patients, focus on patients, looking at bringing out Health Vault. It is actually looking at emergency care. It is actually also looking at Medico Helpline, Payer Connect, and API exposure to deal with. So it's a mobility platform that all individuals, like patients, should be able to actually get a handle on their health and their health control. It will also benefit a lot to the healthcare providers. It will have automation, it will have paperless operation, it can save a lot of cost there. It can have a direct interaction with the patients, it will send notifications to the patients. It will be a great CRM tool. Whatever pains that I talked about as an individual, as a patient, this is going to help CRM activity for the healthcare providers. It will build a loyalty program. It is definitely going to be secured. Now, when I say this, is it all true? No, it is going to take time. It is definitely some certain things that is there on the roadmap, but it is going to need some critical success factors in the form of help from the government, making sure we are talking about mobility devices. Do we have that kind of connectivity of 3G all across? Definitely, those are dimensions that we will look at for making sure that this is successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suresh Kulkarni, for a wonderful presentation. Yeah, we have a lot of problems. The data resides in silos, and it's very difficult to kind of integrate the data in healthcare. We have data coming from different systems, different medical devices, and probably interoperability can come in and kind of help us in this problem. So thank you, sir. I would like Mr. Primanshu Singh to take it over and discuss the patient experience. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Primanshu. I represent Practo. So a little bit of how we began. So Practo started with a bad patient experience, right? the founder wanted to find a knee replacement surgeon for his father, and he went through hell. He couldn't figure out which doctor to go to, where to find him, what time is he available, lots of pain points. And he said, hey, that's a problem that technology can solve, right? I mean, in these days, and we looked at examples, and we looked at IRCTC, for example, right? How it changed the way we do train bookings, right? So much of pain was eased. So we said, okay. So we started with the first product, which was a doctor search engine. We said, let's list all the doctors available in India on a platform and make them searchable, right? So by entering all the data points that we have about his qualifications, about what people think about him, his timings, right? And so we began with saying, hey, there are 1 million doctors in India. Where do we get a database of these doctors? And to our surprise, it wasn't available anywhere, right? Nobody knows where these 1 million doctors are. So we said, how do we solve it? So we have our own, so we equipped our team with Google Maps. There are boys on bikes who go on every street in the city, map all the doctors available in the region, and list them on Practo. So that's one. So from a patient perspective, we said, okay, let's solve the search problem first. Once we solved that problem, we began with saying, what are the next pain point? And he said, how does a patient, after searching for a doctor, get an appointment? And for that, we studied a lot of models. For example, we looked at Uber. What does Uber do, right? It says you just use technology to give access to these doctors, right? So we created a instant booking platform. We met a lot of doctors and a lot of patients to figure out what is the right product. And doctors came and told us, we're very busy, but 40% of our patients who book appointments never turn up. So there are a lot of doctor no-shows, right? And you would appreciate the time slot for a doctor is a perishable commodity, right? He books 15 minutes for a patient, the patient doesn't turn up, he's wasted that time. So we said, okay, so that's the doctor part of it. So what is the patient part of it? And the patient said, and we looked at data. So the 51% of all patients who go and see a doctor wait for at least 10 minutes to see a doctor, even with a prior appointment, right? And that's such a huge wastage of time. So we said, let's try solving that problem first. So we said, we will, through our platform, allow patients to look at the calendar of doctors, pre-book, right, an appointment. And this is all free, by the way. And in case the doctor is not available, he can do an RSVP with the patient saying, I'm running half an hour late. If you intubate people in advance, they will plan accordingly, right? So because of a booking platform, what we realize is 50% or 50% more, which is 83% of patients had less than 10 minutes of wait time across the clinics that we monitor, right? Which we thought is wow. Then we looked at, we have a product called Instant Booking, wherein you can book without talking to any human being, right? Basically just clicking a button and booking an appointment. And that has an amazing uptake, right? The point I want to bring is healthcare is just not about doctors and providers. I think it begins from the patient, right? If we are able to provide a better patient experience, and our way of looking at it is products. We believe if you create kick-ass products, you don't need to push it. Like, nobody taught us how to use an iPhone, right? Nobody taught us how to use web or WhatsApp, right? But millions of people, my grandmother sends a picture to me every day on WhatsApp, right? She was never taught, but I think that's a part of great products. So we at Practo believe if we create better patient experience through better products, we're going to create a great healthcare environment. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Premansu, for a wonderful presentation. In fact, this is one of the key challenges to improve patient experience. We can definitely use IT to improve the patient experience. How can they get the appointment scheduling done beforehand, so they need not wait long in the queue. So along with their kids, along with their families. So thank you for addressing this challenge, Mr. Premansu. Now I would request Mr. Bikraman, founder of HealthReach, to take it over.
Good afternoon, friends. The session which we are addressing is today on how technology and analytics can be the solution for tomorrow. I would briefly like to touch upon some of the thoughts which I have, and with my experience over the years, 25 odd years, and the rest we'll probably leave it for our interaction in the session. We all know and we are aware of, and we've heard a few speakers, and we are going to hear about it more through these two-day sessions, that if we have the right data, analytics, technology and services, there is a lot that can be done. I mean, today's healthcare scenario globally shows us that there is a value saving across each area. You call it readmissions, how many readmissions could be saved, and the value of the $1 billion which could save behind that. Coordination of care could be managed better if the cases were picked up early, especially the chronic diseases. Treating them earlier could save high costs, which otherwise we tend to spend on the care provided to those patients. And likewise, if treatment for other critical cases are provided in time and right diagnosis is provided in time, again saves us a lot. Pharmacy, we have always heard about that, dispensing of pharmacy drugs on time, providing the right medication at the right time, again saves a lot of money through the process. So this is something which we are all aware of, and that how much data is critical to us, and if that was to talk and integrate it, it helps all of us in saving a lot of money in the healthcare system. Having said that, I want all of us to ponder a bit that is it only the technology or the data which is required, and that if that was to come one day and get all integrated, is that the answer, or a bit of a digression towards that the physicians and the medical fraternity also holds equal responsibility? Today, the fraternity, I understand, and I am part of the system, of the healthcare ecosystem, would want to say that, yes, get us the data, get us evidence, and we would love to see that and want to take a diagnosis. But that's not true. Globally, we are seeing that the rate of medical update, which physicians or medical literature, which every 5 years, that hardly 81% physicians spend less than 5 hours per month reading articles. I mean, and folks, that's a matter of concern. With the environment which we are moving in, and I know the pressure stress is not only into the other industries, it's to the medical sector as well. But with that stress, are we updating ourselves enough to be able to, if tomorrow the data comes to us, would we be able to still take the right decision in terms of the diagnosis to the right treatment, plan of treatment? That's important. It's just not finding the physician. It's about the plan of treatment, and the diagnosis needs to be right as well. And that's something which I want to leave a thought with you all as I go move on. All stakeholders, all of us, I mean, be it in the provider space, the patients, the payers, the government, all of them are looking up to the new healthcare system and what are the possibilities in the healthcare system. Be it the foundation, what the healthcare system depends upon, intelligent people. Who doesn't want quick decision makers? Accurate diagnosis and treatment, we just spoke about, that's so critical in the whole process of continuum of care. Innovators, flexibility and dynamism, and people being the complete healthcare managers and professionals being technology friendly. Intelligent tools, we've spoken about a few, we will talk more about it through the day. Highly specialized clinical advanced technology tools, which gives a good view across the complete life cycle of a patient, and of the procedures done, pathways, etc., being examined very well from a 360-degree view. Very important. That looks at, helps to save quality, it brings in safety, helps us manage costs. And finally, it all has to come about to creating an intelligent system, which is patient-centered, technology-enabled, yes, clinical evidence-driven. Very important that whatever you drive and decisions we take for tomorrow, and for patients, particularly our end user, let's not forget him, being patient-centric, that the end user needs to be taken care of and ensure that his decisions on diagnosis or treatment plan is evidence-based, and reduce treatment variation. And this is where we are moving towards. That's the space and area environment where all healthcare practitioners, hospitals, healthcare facilities need to keep working upon as to how to bring in efficiency within the system. And so it's people, tools, and a system being created. But what would it take to create this intelligent system? Can we work in these silos that some people have intelligent people, but they don't have the tool, they don't have the system. Some people have the data, but they don't have the people, and they don't have the right bandwidth to be able to explore that data and put that data to good use. Someone has bought a very good, fine EMR system, but the challenges of being able to get not garbage in, garbage out, but be able to get good data and the right people to feed in the right data. So it has to be, so it's a bit of all of it. You have to be patient-centric, you have to have robust monitoring system, big data capabilities, collaboration, and I'll come to that later some point. Collaboration across the sectors and segments which we spoke about. It's important that we bring in some standardization and uniformity. Comprehensive connected healthcare data and analytics is the answer for this. If we are not able to connect, talk with each other, and bring in all the information, and some of my colleagues, speakers, they just spoke about of how information has to be talking to each other and the patient's data from various formats, be it his demographic to his pharma exchange, which he carries out to payer, as well as hospitals where he goes for an outpatient or an inpatient experience. All of that has to get connected and integrated. So it is important that we get a singular view of the data, and it's dynamic. Yes, protection is very critical in our space and here in terms of data when it's being shared, but it's all very necessary to get integrated. Otherwise, it's all working and talking in silos, and that's where we have challenges. We have some bits of each of the intelligence system, but they're not talking to each other. And therefore, that is something which we need to pay attention to. With this background, knowing where we are, we as an organization, HealthReach, decided to seeing a concern across, yes, clinical treatment and diagnosis is very critical. Users expect the best clinical treatment for themselves, and therefore they want access to the best doctors. They want access to the best physicians in the world. If we can get them, and you can provide them access to the person who is able to look at their clinical concerns, clinical diagnosis of whatever their primary opinion has come to them, and draw a assessment out of it to be able to help the physician and them to implement on a clinical pathway or a plan is what they would require and desire. And therefore, the whole effort is towards working with organizations and individuals to be able to, as what we spoke about, that longitudinal patient data is critical to be collected. The patient data has to be assembled, has to be managed and brought together for to be able to understand his continuum of care till now, whether be it his interaction with a physician at an outpatient level, primary physician level or hospital level, his other information from the pharmacy, collate information, comprehend them, and then be able to send it to the physician, a finest physician, one of the physicians who depend on evidence, physicians who are depend on being objective, and who are away, or I would say a bit steered away from pure financials. I don't want to deep dive there, but that's the whole idea, that we have to have a process where we are able to collect the patient data, provide, and all his longitudinal data comes across. We are able to comprehend that, and as a case, send the clinical summary to the physician and an authority to be able to respond and be able to advise the primary physician on a pathway for the right diagnosis, providing the right diagnosis and the treatment going forward. So, We will talk about this further. There are areas where each one of us has a role to play, be it the government, the provider, the payer, and the farmer. And we would probably discuss this over the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bikram. Information is another kind of nervous system of the healthcare. There's a lot of data in terms of volume, variety, and velocity. So definitely, if you can give a comprehensive, complete view of the patient to the doctor, I think it would be really good and improve the care continuum. Thank you, Mr. Bikram. So now I will request Mr. Vamsi Chandra to take it over.
Yeah, so what I would be talking about is IT enabling healthcare delivery, global best practices. I know there's Dr. Balaji from HCG. I know the members from the Army hospitals are here. I know there's representatives from AIIMS. If there are members here from different hospitals, can you just raise your hands? So good, I guess I see another 3-4 hands. So Dr. Neena Pahuja yesterday requested me to actually specifically talk about HIMSS EMR adoption model. It's a global best practice which is being followed across Europe, United States, Asia Pacific. Even in India, we have Apollo Chennai, we have Max, which are at stage 6. It's a very good practice. I'm going to spend some time on it because Dr. Neena felt that this is something that should be shared with everyone else. I'm probably going to touch about ACO. So you know that in the US right now, pay for performance is moving to pay for services. So it's basically how the patients become, if the patients become better, they're more healthier, the hospitals actually get to make more money. I guess we are a little time away. There are similar models in Singapore, in Spain, in Visalud in Spain, and other such models do exist. Population health management, more commonly known as POP health, is something which is now a rage across most of the developed countries. And this is something where the governments are really interested in, so I'm just going to touch upon that. There's so much discussions that are happening about digital prescriptions, I won't touch on it. Not too much on utilization metrics, but these are some of the best practices that needs to be adopted by hospitals, and definitely hospitals and clinics. The HIMSS Analytics EMR adoption model has got basically 8 stages in it. So starting at stage 0, where there is, so there is actually no systems. So let's say that it's just a paper-based system. Then stage 1 is where you have the laboratory, radiology, pharmacy as different systems, or one system which is basically over there. See, it's very important, as long as you have medication data, lab data, and radiology reports available, you can at least reconstruct. I'm taking an example of a crime scene, where you can pretty much like go and reconstruct a patient's, probably a differential diagnosis. We might not be able to reach a final diagnosis in every single case, but there are a whole lot of areas where at least you can reach a differential diagnosis and understand what's really happening to the patient. Stage 2, you have CDR, your clinical data repository, your controlled medical vocabulary, clinical decision systems may have document imaging, some kind of interoperability capability that exists. Stage 3 is core protocols being available from a nursing perspective, clinical perspective, the documentation is available, all the flow sheets are there, they're mandatorily filled up. Entire clinical decision support system, at least the basic, not entire, sorry, basic of error checking is available. So ensure that there is no drug-to-drug interactions which are there, or drug-to-food, or drug-to dosage calculations, duplicate dosing. So at least those basic hygiene factors are checked by the system. And DEX, which is available outside of radiology. So people can access from the departments. So the doctors who are actually ordered for these tests to be done. So we have an oncologist who is requested for, let's say, a mammogram and an ultrasound to be there, or the pathologist basically looks at the results of that to decide whether an FNAC needs to be done or not. So at least it has reached that level now. The 4th level is basically entire CPOE, clinical decision support, including clinical protocols. So there are pathways which are available, protocols which are available. So if we have a patient let's say a 40-year-old patient with an acute myocardial infarction who comes into the hospital, no diabetes, no hypertension, so do not assume any complications. A CABG is going to be conducted on the patient. So on day one, who are the different people who are going to meet up? What are the orders that are going to be placed? On the day, second day, which is the day of surgery, third day, day of post-operative, day one, day of discharge. Who are the different actors? What needs to happen? What medications? Anything that's going to be used is actually documented as a part of the protocol, and the system actually follows that. So if someone misses out something, then there are alerts which automatically come in the system, workflows come up, people are alerted, they don't take any action, it gets escalated, and so on and so forth. Stage 5, you have a full radiology packs across all the departments, whether it's from an ophthalmology, whether it's an oncology packs, whether it's radiology packs and everything out there. Stage 6, physician documentation, including structured templates, order sets, full CDSS, including variation and compliance, closed loop medication administration. All of these features are available. This itself is a huge topic by itself, so I'm really going to rush through. Stage 7, which is like the final kind of vision where people would want to reach. There are hospitals in the US which have achieved that. There are hospitals in APAC which have achieved that. Complete EMR, the CCD, the continuity of care document transitions to shared data seamlessly, data warehousing, analytics, data continuity with emergency department, ambulatory, OP is available. So those are the details that are there, and the slides will be, these presentations will be available, at least some of the presentations will be available for you on our website, so you can actually download from there. So a lot of predictive models. I mean, the world's moving towards analytics, right? We spoke about this yesterday very briefly. So we're going to have injury prevention models, so infection-related models, falls, trauma cases, glycemic control, adverse drug events, predicting things before they are occurring, or at least to an extent where what are the challenges that you might face out there. Atrial fibrillation, so based upon patient monitoring devices. So yesterday, Dr. Diwan talked about Philips system. So VisiQ is a great system that's there. So it has the ability to say for an intensivist which systems that which are the patients that you can, that you need to really concentrate upon right now. So predictive models have been there. It's not that it's really a new thing. They've been in existence for 10, 15 years. So moving from simple statistical, stochastic models to machine learning, deep learning, heuristic, algorithmic models is where we are moving to. And I'm sure a bunch of organizations here are working on that. So across the areas, so these are some of the models which are available today that hospitals can imbibe, clinicians can imbibe. It's basically a tool to assess them. And the amount of information today the clinicians are having is humongous. And it's just not possible to look at that information. So some of the things from a revenue and operational perspective that exist is that campaigns, right? Hospitals run campaigns. And how do you run a campaign? So, next month is World Cardiac Day, so I'm going to do a cardiac campaign. Or there are very specific campaigns. I mean, if you look at really retail, banking, and other sectors, those so specific campaigns, right? You look at Flipkart and how it actually does it, or an Ola Caps, or any of these guys. So basically, can you look at a patient who had a transient ischemic attack and who had an MRI brain? So the radiology report, you apply natural language processing and that, and see which of those patients actually have an aneurysm. So based upon that, now you have a bunch of patients, so let's say 1 in every 10 patients have an aneurysm in those MRI brain cases, then those patients need a digital subtraction angiography, a ballooning to be done. So it's a very specific campaign that can be done basically using these models. Revenue cycle predictive analytics and a whole lot of them, activity-based costing, which I'm sure most of the hospitals would be interested in. Details from a population health management, data aggregation, so which we have spoken about. So Jay Seelan yesterday was talking about it. Risk stratification, care coordination, but more importantly, patient outreach. So there is an amazing work that's happening by Madhu from MQ. I'm sure she spoke about it yesterday. There's a great work that's happening in terms of outreach. So those are some of the things that exist. So again, some screens, how do your risk models come up, how predictive models actually show up, those risk scores out there, how you can actually take, so this is data taken only from Pune where there's a huge amount of information, and just taking a hemogram value, saying that which of the patients are actually anemic, who have the potential based on the PSA values, who would get, or who have a higher risk of prostate cancer, who do not have a risk of prostate cancer. So basically looking at those information, so the orange guys are the ones who have the risk rates over here. And just taking a diabetic patient based upon these best practices going forward, like what are the different things that you can do. So when would the patient potentially get a nephropathy, neuropathy, retinopathy, and so on and so forth is something that you can actually do. So these are some of the best practices that we have seen that are being implemented across hospitals globally. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Vamsi, for explaining the stage EMR's adoption model. I would like to request Dr. Gogia to take it over and explain us like how we kind of mitigate the natural disasters with the help of IT.
Thank you. Actually, my talk is a little bit of an anomaly here because it's about doctors more out of the patients rather than doctors and getting outcomes. And anyway, let's see where it merges into the current topic. 70% of healthcare is private. Most of the solutions which you talk about, of course, are either in the corporate level, which is again not a very other, because most 60% of patients are rural based. You know, when you talk about the high-end solutions, we are looking at very, very low-end solutions are required. And actually, if you work in a rural area, whom does one go to? How many of you have ever stayed in a rural area? We would just be interested to know. And when you had a problem, who was the doctor you went to? I mean, in your old days, of course, not now. The local doctor who is the RMP or the quack or whatever, right? And also another thing which I would just like to state is telemedicine, which has been talked about yesterday. I say very clearly it provides half a doctor. But if we use the rural doctor who is already there, enhance his skill level, can we make it more than half? And we say telemedicine is good where there is no doctor because the half a doctor is there. It is useless where there is a 100% doctor. If you have a hospital next door, would you try to do telemedicine? You won't, because you got a good doctor with him. This thing is that whenever a problem occurs, like a disaster, like we show out here, or people in this thing, when they face with a problem, how can they get quickly, with the help of IT, the support they require? And just take another example of it. A local practitioner, again in the rural area, a simple dressing is required. But one of the components of the proper dressing is missing. It can be knowledge, it can be equipment, or just the drugs. Now, these things can easily be sent. The thing that we are going to transmit through telemedicine is the knowledge. And with that, we can improve healthcare and things. Otherwise, that 20 rupees turns to 2,000 rupees or so, and this has all been discussed yesterday, so I don't want to go too much into that. And based on these is some of the projects that I'm talking about are being discussed. We have done a project in Mizoram where, I mean, this has been the same as the Arvind Eye Care model, a little different. I don't want to go into the differences, we don't have the time. But in that project, which is basically trained people in the block level who are not doctors, who are at fixed centers. They have seen over 10,000 patients in 2 years, and we have showcased there has been huge saving in the cost of transport, and it has more than paid for itself. The project cost has been paid for just by the saving that we created in that. Similarly, another project, I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's a limited time. I was told 4 minutes actually, so I don't want to spend too much time on all my thing. Another topic, which is again close to my heart, a problem in the rural areas. There are 40 million patients of lymphedema in the country, 40 million, mostly in rural areas, and they require very, very simple care. Leg washing, sometimes antibiotics, massage, compression therapy, and you can do that at the village level. 90% of care is possible at the village level. The only thing missing, unfortunately, that missing element is not only among the doctors, among the rural practitioners, it is also missing among the doctors in very, very high-flown areas. In the corporate, they don't know that lymphedema is a treatable problem caused by filariasis, sometimes after cancer. It is a very well treatable problem, but just the knowledge is missing. And through telemedicine, we want to just get that knowledge simulated, get the equipment sent across to those places, and a huge patient load of the second or third highest cause of morbidity in India can be controlled. And telemedicine again is a facilitator for that. Just improve the knowledge level of the people in the rural areas and give them the component that are required for that. Similarly, Nepal has had a disaster, and it's well known that 80% of the population gets affected by the disaster by mental problems. 3 to 5% of them turn serious over a period of time, over a few months. And for that, long-term and monitoring and care is required, which is best done at the community level. The local people are the best people to do it. They just need a little bit of training. And we had done a similar project after the tsunami and found excellent results. We could cut down the suicide rates. Similarly, the suicide rates in Nepal have gone down to a huge extent. And we are trying this project. And this is the summary plan of a project. We have done a needs assessment. We have identified the problem areas where the 90 to 80% of the houses have been destroyed. There are people who are almost still 10% of the population affected. We have identified the local partners who can be trained. We have looked at the availability of connectivity. And then now we are well into the implementation phase. We have to order the necessary equipment, get the funds. Of course, we are looking for funds to help us partner the project. Installation training, do the test sessions. We have already identified an expert partner, which is the Dharan institution, which is one of the, like the aims of India is in a place called Dharan. And their psychiatrists have been identified, and they are willing to participate. Then we do the maintenance, troubleshooting, retraining of the people, how to take care of, see the psychiatrists are sending across their own people to train the local workers on how to identify the serious problem people. They are brought to the center, and a teleconsultation session takes place at an appointment time. Then we do the documentation and we hand it over to the partners who are looking into it. So, in summary, I would just put some phrases. There is a thing known as Andho Mein Kana Raja, and all of those who don't know Hindi, it means for the one-eyed, for the blind, the one-eyed is king. And for us, the rural practitioners are the one-eyed people. Let us enhance the skill levels, let us enhance their vision so that they can do better care. Also, if we do that, the jobs will remain in the rural areas, and it will help India to attain the 8 to 10% of growth. IT has to be facilitator where the knowledge is the big gap, and let us focus on the people's needs, and solutions will automatically flow. And when we do that, just you have to send some equipment and knowledge across. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gogia, for sharing your wonderful work in the disaster mitigation area with the help of IT. Thank you so much. We know that there is a really low doctor-to-patient ratio, and training paramedics would definitely help in increasing the reach of the patient care in the rural areas. Thank you, Dr. Gogia. I would now request Mr. Anand Ambekar to take it over.
Good morning, everyone. So I represent EMC Square here. So first of all, some introduction to EMC Square and why we are here. So EMC is a federation of companies. We provide storage and cloud and virtualization infrastructure to IT services, and all over the world we have, we have the cloud providers, and we are known for the infrastructure providers for all the financials, healthcare, and insurance players all over the world. We also have as part of our company, we also have RSA in our portfolio, which is focused on security, data security, and IT security. And we also, basically work with healthcare providers all over the world to make their IT applications work seamlessly behind the scene. So that is about EMC. As a EMC in India, we started with a vision to transform healthcare in emerging countries. So what we mean by that is more of, we don't want to play into the healthcare IT ecosystem itself, but we want to enable the players, the IT solution providers, to come on a platform. And we strongly believe that no single entity can, transform the healthcare. but we believe that a platform wherein all the players coming together and solving the healthcare problem does make sense. So, so we set out on building the platform with all the entities tying together, and so, the solution or the platform concept was more of building an integrated and interoperable solution, and we believe that so the integrated and interoperable solution can work when all the ecosystem players are tied up onto the platform. To show the power of platform, we started out our journey with public health solution. So Dr. Balaji set out a context about taking care of health workers, what they do on the ground, and how they deliver healthcare delivery on the ground. So we thought let's focus on the public health and how do we transform the public health delivery at the ground. And so we developed an application which is based on this platform and which makes use of this platform to basically create universal health records for the citizens, healthcare mobile applications for health workers, ANMs and ASHA and male health workers. And we also provide a doctor's portal who is working at PHC to monitor and understand the performance of health workers and the actual ground realities of the healthcare delivery. Then we have public health management as one of our consumer, wherein the professionals will look at the dashboards, understand the PHC management, understand the PHC work function and operational efficiencies, and we also come up with the dashboards for them to monitor those things. So some of the applications, so the application which is built on this platform is basically giving the government a complete understanding of primary healthcare delivery at PHC level. So this can be scaled up at the state level, at the national level as well. So we have covered, this is a very comprehensive application we have developed on top of platform, which cares about NCDs as well as communicable diseases, and more emphasis on RCH is also given as government is also emphasizing more on the RCH services. So when a patient at a PHC or at a subcenter level, when a health worker visits a patient or a citizen to monitor his or her health, currently they carry at least 50 number of registers with them, with huge registers, and they do maintain all those paper records and do create all those monthly and weekly reports. And that is a huge burden on them in addition to the care delivery that they are providing right now. So we set out our journey to basically digitize all these processes. And this is a pilot, this is basically piloting in one of the PHC in Karnataka. And so these are the dashboards that we have for ANMs, for the health workers, and to see basically how she is doing and what all activities that are upcoming for the next week and next month. So this is more of increasing health workers' efficiency, increasing the PHC healthcare delivery efficiency, and as well as monitoring the performance of the entire healthcare delivery system. So since government has a strong emphasis on RCH, so we have these individual registers which are digitized, which includes maternal health, child health, reproductive health, child nutrition, as well as communicable and non-communicable diseases. So that includes including the immunization charts, then growth charts, and then basically TB treatment, how the treatment is delivered, dermatology functions. These images shows where there are problems, what kind of detailed patches, and so on and so forth. We also have the screening, oral cancer screening camps, which basically a PHC carries out in the catchment area, and it basically screens for the possible cancer patients and report it back to the PHC and state level departments. We also incorporated a module wherein citizens of the catchment will provide feedback on ASHA or health workers' performance. Are they happy with the performance? What kind of problems they are facing? And so we talked about sensors earlier. We have incorporated and implemented the wireless Bluetooth-enabled sensors in this whole system, where healthcare provider or healthcare worker will measure 6 parameters of the patient, and without entering into the system, it directly delivers to the patient's medical record. So we have almost 6 or 7 parameters, vital parameters, which we capture into the electronic medical record of the patient. On the doctor side, we have provided a portal for the doctor wherein a doctor can do OPD of a patient when she or he visits PHC, as well as take the baseline health and understand the health indicator dashboards, how the PHC is doing. There are some graph-related insights about what is the patient, what is the accessibility of the care centers to the patient, what is the village size, and basically drill down upon these charts to get more details about the performance of the PHC. This chart shows more of accessibility of health center vis-a-vis the villagers and the size of villages. So this all application is based on a tablet which will work on offline mode completely and can be synced when the connectivity is available to the cloud. So being this is a mobile application, we can track the individual health worker, where is she, how long she is being giving care, and basically map out all those analytics and come up with all those analytics to basically show the performance, which you can see at the staff accountability. So these are the various analytics which are more about drug inventory, accountability of the patient, care delivery provider, as well as we have incorporated risk modeling in pregnancy to identify high-risk pregnancies. So that is all about us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anand. I've been told to really squeeze this session, so we'll take only 2 questions from the audience. I'll request Dr. Sumer to share his experiences. Yeah.
Very good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, and I'm happy to be here in this August gathering and panelist. And I'm wanting to share my perspective of I want to share my perspective as a radiologist, as a physician who has ventured into IT-centric part, which is teleradiology. And I want to share how we evolved and what are things which are very centric to Indian scenario, which we usually don't hear in most of the places. So I would begin with acknowledgement. There is no one correct answer to every problem. There has to you have to see the problem and kind of fit it. Innovation is important. So this is how radiology started. This is 1895. This was the first X-ray, and this is Mr. Ranjan. Radiology gradually evolved to films, and many of you who are from medical background, you might have, or even non-medical background, you might have seen doctors holding an X-ray film, looking at the sun and looking at the finding. Then it went on to the dark rooms. The radiology runs in dark rooms. You put films on a view box and you make a report. Then came the era of the workstations. You started to report on complex workstations in the computers, and then the internet interlinked it all, and maybe the radiologists grew smarter and their locations grew exotic. And now, even now, the size of the device is getting smaller and getting more and more powerful. So there is a lot of talk on use of iPad for emergency reporting. So this is how things have evolved. So when I started teleradiology, my teleradiology practice in 2008, everybody asked me that are you report, because everybody had a view that teleradiology is KPO, which is reporting for US. And everybody used to ask me that are you reporting for an American hospital? So I told them that my concept of teleradiology is that teleradiology is that you're reporting for, it is transmission of images from one location to another. That other location need not be US. Why don't you look at the requirement and the opportunity within the country itself? So, and that was the era when, everybody started to talk about world is flat, now you can have global work coming to India. Everybody was talking about teleradiology in the beginning with the perspective that Indian doctors would report for abroad. And, classically people used to look at Indian market as, people who can go abroad and work, and then they started to look at us like call centers. But I want to showcase a side of the Indian market, which I'm sure you might have seen this picture in many of the presentations, that today in the spending in the healthcare sector from the Indian consumer per se has grown. So we know that today in many centers in India, the healthcare access that the patient has to tertiary healthcare is less. But more and more doctors are trained in centers which use radiology as the evidence. And there is a physician shortage, and radiologist shortage is even more, acute. Now, I want to show a figure to you which is of, of very valuable interest, because people say US has radiologist shortage and their ratio to radiologist to population is 1 is to 10,000. In India, the ratio is 1 is to 100,000. And we have had, talks of people who say that Indian doctors would fill up the gap for the US, the lack of radiologists in US. I personally feel that probably we are not looking at the lack which we have in our own country. So this is how we started, and we started with, places which do not have a doctor, places who have doctors but do not have a doctor, radiologist for emergency. We even provided, places. There were places which had a radiologist but was not trained in musculoskeletal radiology. We had a place where they were a good radiologist but not trained in cardiac radiology. So we tried and we mixed and matched for different centers. So since 2008, this is the kind of presence we have. And we started with the India-centric approach, and gradually we got to know that even places like Tanzania, Mozambique, they had similar problems to us, so we could expand our client base to these places. What we
Doctor,
do is...
we have a time constraint, so just a time check.
I'll be very quick. So this is how we worked on that. We link these centers to a centralized server, and then we distribute work to radiologists. There are some problems which we face, particularly in India, that ultrasounds in India are done by radiologists and is governed by an act called as Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques Act. So ultrasound, which is a very, very useful modality for diagnosing acute abdomen, is somehow, we cannot do a tele-reporting on this because of the problem of sex determination in ultrasound. So that is an India-centric problem. Second is that many of the hospitals that we talk of serving the tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, they still have machines which are non-DICOM files. Sometimes physicians think that they don't need a radiologist. Networks, bandwidths are still a challenge. And when we provide for a chain of government hospitals in Assam, and one of the questions they asked us is that a radiologist is supposed to be legally liable for the contrast reactions as well. So that is a challenge which we face in India. I would want to bring to your attention a problem which is very India-centric, is that if you report a case in India remotely, and if that image goes to a court as a evidence, for example, somebody has a fracture and that is a court evidence, the radiologist has to go to a court and testify. And now if you imagine the problem that we have in teleradiology is we are serving remote areas. And so if your radiologist gets a call, I personally had to, go to one of the places to testify. And these places are remote, you understand. There's no air connectivity, you go by airport, then bus, then reach there to testify, and then the money doesn't make sense. So what we do now is that in any center that we report, we have an agreement that we are not going to report anything for which is going to act as evidence in the court.
Doctor, we just have a
Quick, sir. I'm just finishing. I also want to emphasize the utility of tele or medicine or teleradiology as an educational tool. We use my blog and my Facebook groups to disseminate the digital data we keep accumulating from across the country. And in India, we don't get normal cases to report. We get all positive cases, late stage cancer, syndromes. Normal people don't go to hospital. So we have such a huge data that we keep sharing, and that helps us to build up the data. And now there is a talk of technology called as tribogenics. Tribogenics has reduced the size of the X-ray machine, and if that comes up, you might have an X-ray machine size of a mobile phone, and you will have patients taking selfie and sharing to the radiologist for reporting. I would very quickly wind off everything, and I will wind off I'll give a summary of the entire thing, that this is the chasm that we all, everybody of the panel sitting here, all of us sitting together for healthcare IT, this is the chasm that we are all facing. On one side of the chasm is the early market. Early market is by the techies and the visionaries, they take up the early market. And on the other side is the mainstream market, in between is the chasm. Now, if I draw this in a graph, there are innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, laggards. Now, I want you to see this picture here, and I want you to understand the gap between the early adopters and the early majority is the chasm. Many people would bring up ideas, technologies, but most would not cross the chasm. They would not be taken up by the majority. That is the challenge we all face. To bridge the chasm, especially for teleradiology in India, we would need more and more government commitment and support. We have to have more and more larger companies to get enabled. It has to be IT enabled. You cannot think of
Doctor,
it from an IT-led perspective. Thank you. And we need an overall restructuring of the belief that radiologists should be available on the site. A radiologist can be available anywhere and give opinion. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for taking a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sumer. So we have only 2 questions from the audience. If anybody has any questions, otherwise we'll just wrap it up. Mike, please.
Mr. Sharma, I believe, from Analytics.
Mr. Vamsi.
Mr. Vamsi, okay. From Analytics, you referred in your first slide about digital prescription. Can you elaborate on that?
No, so I was just asked to speak about best practices, and I refrained from talking about digital prescriptions. The reason is that, see, in the US, SureScripts is mandated for meaningful use, and when Uday was showing that information, the entire thing was there when he was showing that circle with all the points of meaningful use, the mandated thing. SureScripts is mandated out there. So there are countries where digital prescription is mandated. It has to be followed. There are no exceptions to it. But unfortunately, I didn't delve into it, and I can take it offline.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
See, actually, there are countries where the prescription is not given to the patient, it goes directly to the pharmacy. So you can take that, and the pharmacy knows what all drugs are. He just traces down the number, and he just gives them that, this is my patient number. The pharmacy already knows what is to be given to him.
So, sorry, I think we don't have time for any more questions. Definitely we can take it offline, our event take offline. Thank you so much. Thank you.